Hey guys, it's Jones with poolwarehouse.com, and over the next several days, we're going to teach you how to build your own in-ground swimming pool. If you're a mechanic, if you're a heavy equipment operator, electrician, plumber, engineer, or you're just good at DIY hands-on projects, then you could potentially save yourself tens of thousands of dollars by building your own swimming pool kit. If that's you, or you just want to learn how to build a completely customizable pool for well under $100,000, stay tuned. Over the next several days, we're going to show you all the skills and trades that are required. We're on the back deck with John, and he's agreed to let us invade his home for the next week or so and take part in this building project that's going on. Now, John, I saw your dig sheets, and it looks like you're going on with an 18 by 36 rectangle pool. What are some of the reasons why you decided to go with that shape and that size pool?
We had a pool before at a house we used to live at, and so we kind of had a direction, but I needed to make some adjustments. And so I wanted to go with a middle-sized pool.
Sure.
You know, that's a little bit less water than we had before, a little bit easier to maintain, keep clean, and
sure.
You know, and we didn't really need the space. So, you know, a real large pool. So this is going to be a perfect size, I think, for it.
Do you have any kind of background in heavy equipment operation or construction, or have you ever worked with your hands doing anything before?
I actually do. I kind of grew up in the construction trades, and I do a little bit of light excavation now. So I know my way around a little bit, you know.
All right, well, we're going to find out. Let's go.
I guess.
John and I are getting ready to lay his pool out in the backyard, but before we do, I want to touch on your dig sheets and your panel layout. Every pool comes with a set of plans that you will have electronically approved before we start production on your pool. Now, it's important that you print these off and keep them on hand. You will need them during the build process. We're going to dive into the first sheet, and when you look at this first sheet, it's an overview of your panel layout. So what you have is different panels that are noted all the way around this pool, and they're denoted with different sizes. So for example, you have a 4-foot panel. You have an 8-foot that says Dash Aqua Genie. That's your skimmer panel. You have another 8-foot, and so on. Now those panels correlate to a legend on the right-hand side. So for example, on that first 4-foot panel, if I come over here and look at this legend, it says description, panel 4-foot long, 700 series. If I go on to the right, it says I need to have a quantity of 2. If I look at this panel layout, I know that I have 2 4-foot panels. It's really that easy to understand your panel layout, and it also shows you where your step is located. The next page is going to be very important for laying out your pool. Now, flipping over to page 2, this is the finished dimensions of your pool. Your custom liner is made to fit these dimensions, so it's important you understand what this means and how to read this. If you look on the left-hand side, you've got some notes. Definitely want to dive into those, but one to point out is it says excavate 2 inches deeper in each instance. What they're telling you is, for example, this is a 4-foot coved flat bottom. That's the finished dimension of the pool. You need to go 2 inches deeper. So that would be a 4'2" excavation, because we're going to come back with 2 inches of our pool base material. We'll show you how that's done, but it's important you understand that. Next, if you look at your panel shelf, and that's the shelf around that hole that you've opened up, and that's where the panel's set. It says it's 3'4" or 40 inches. You also come down 42 inches. So we're going to add 2 inches to that. So if that's a 40-inch dimension, we're going to go down 42, because we know that pool-based material goes 2 inches across that entire floor and 2 inches up on the wall. So don't forget that. If you have questions about excavation when you're starting your project, make sure to pause, give us a call. We definitely want to help you understand this. Have your order number on hand, and we'll be able to reference your dig sheets as well and walk you through that. Now, looking at the overall dimensions of the pool, I always like to recommend to customers to check this before you approve your dig sheets. So this is a 36-foot long pool. John has looked at this. He does approve. His pool is at 18 by 36, and quickly we can look and see that the width is 18 foot and it's 36 foot long, and we do know that it has the correct tanning ledge and step in there. And remember, when we lay out this pool, you also have to take into account an over dig area. So just because your pool is, for example, 18 feet wide, you're gonna mark out an 18-foot opening, but you're also gonna go 3 feet out from that. That's what we call your over dig area. So for the width of the pool, when we lay out this box, we're gonna actually have a 24-foot wide area, and we're gonna have a 42-foot long area. Inside of that box that we've laid out that's now 24 by 42, you're gonna have another box that's 18 by 36. We'll show you how that looks in a few minutes, but it's important that you understand you do have an over dig area that's 3 feet entirely around the perimeter of that 18 by 36 pool. Now our next sheet is a 3D view of the pool. And in John's case, this isn't so important. He doesn't have a diving pool, but I've brought an example of a diving pool with me to show you what that looks like. If you had a diving pool, this sheet is to prove that it is coded to meet ANSI regulations. So there are guidelines that govern how the bottom hopper of a diving pool is excavated. You'll use your dig sheets to do that, but you do need to save this sheet to show that it has been coded correctly. Additionally, make sure you hang on to all your dig sheets. We keep record as well, but if you ever wanted to buy another liner 20 years down the road, you would never need to measure anything. If you have that dig sheet on hand, that will show the dimensions of your pool, and it's really just that easy as submitting that dig sheet to us, and we can get that new liner coming right back out to you. Now we'll go ahead and flip over to the last page. And on the last page, we have a somewhat exploded view of John's step. If you remember, he had corner steps on each side. He's got a huge tanning ledge all the way across, and then he has 2 full-length steps that come after that and take him into that flat bottom area. Now this view shows that the step is made up of looks like 4 or 5 different modules. What I love is that there is an exploded view of each module that comes with your step. It's taped to the step when it arrives, and that exploded view shows you how every module is put together. Hydra really has thought of everything when it comes to easy assembly. Make sure you hang on to those sheets. You will need them. Now we're going to get back to laying out John's pool and show you what's next. Now what John's doing is he's going to go ahead and rebar stake out the edge perimeter of the pool. We're using our dig sheets, but the line is because we want to make sure we get this pool perfectly square with the house. Now we've come 6 feet out from his existing deck. All we're trying to do is make sure that we have over dig area to build, to plumb, to put our braces. We're going to go ahead and mark all that out for you and show you what that looks like right now. You got more work to do. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this long wall of the pool. We've got 36 feet. We're gonna pull the diagonal line from our 18-foot dimension on the other side of the pool. And if you'll go ahead, you're gonna wanna mark it, pull it right up there to the 43, because that's your diagonal dimension, and that's where you're gonna set your next pin. That looks about perfect, all right? We'll go ahead and get the 2 other corners and we'll be done. All right, we've got the 18 by 36 pool laid out. John, this is your pool.
Yep, I'm standing in it.
Could you imagine standing right here on your tanning ledge?
I can imagine.
You're gonna come down, you're gonna walk down a couple steps, and now we're in water. So your tanning ledge typically comes out about 8 feet, so you're gonna be roughly right in here when you come off of your tanning ledge. So as you can tell, you've got tons of hanging out room. So you'll be able to use this whole entire area and still have a shallow tanning ledge for your kids to play on and for your wife to lay out. It's looking good. Now next we're gonna go ahead and we're going to mark the over dig area. We're gonna take a tape and we're gonna come 3 feet off of every corner to make sure we've lined out that over dig area. So let's go ahead and do that. John, if you wanna go ahead and spray for me, I'll go ahead and get this mark made. Alrighty, if you wanna mark right there. Okay, and we're gonna come off this corner. Also gonna mark right there. All right, now we're gonna hit the other corners. right, we've got this pool all laid out. We have our 18 by 36 pool. The next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and find zero. We want this to be perfectly level with your back deck, so we're gonna get a transit out, we're gonna find zero. But before we start the first bit of excavation, did you call 811?
Sure did.
All right.
Them first, call septic. Make sure all lines are marked. I even marked my gutter drains.
Perfect. So I love what John said. Septic is typically separate. So if you live in the county, you can call 811. They'll mark all your utility lines, but they probably won't mark your septic. You'll need to call the septic company separate. Make sure you mark your drain lines, any gutter lines, any septic lines before you start digging. Call 811. They'll make sure all your utilities are marked. That way you have no chance of busting a gas line or digging into a cable or an electrical line. So make sure you do that. We'll go ahead and find level now. Now we're gonna go ahead and start excavation. You called 811. If you need permits, make sure you've gotten all your permits. Do you have any permits you needed to get?
I'm good.
You're good? So make sure you get all your permits, make sure you call 811. If you've got all that ready to go, then you can start excavation. Regardless, we want this finished pool deck to match up with our existing pool deck. To do that, we're using a laser transit. Now, this is super important because we do want these decks to marry up, and we do want a little bit of fall away from the pool back towards some deck drains that we're gonna install later. So to do that, first we have to get our zero, and we've got it. So using a laser transit, anywhere we go, that is now gonna be our zero. Ultimately, we're gonna move this up to our finished height, and that way when we're in the pool, when we're digging, we can check and make sure we're coming to that finished dimension that we wanna be at. Now to do that, we know we have a 42-inch high panel. So we've gotta come up 42 inches from zero. So we're gonna come up 42 inches. Then we also know that we have coping. Now I'm gonna stop here and talk about coping. It comes in different heights. So your standard coping is probably 2.5 inches depending on the brand. So I would plan on that, but we're doing an automatic tool cover on this particular pool, and it's made by CoverStar. CoverStar has a 4-inch coping profile, so we know we have to take 42 and add 4 more inches to the top. So let's set this actually right here. If you'll hold that in tight, we'll come up from 42, 4 inches to 46, and we're gonna go ahead and mark that right in this spot. And we're gonna know anytime we come back inside the pool, we can check this to make sure we're at that perfect finished dimension. We'll show you how that works in a minute, but can you drive an excavator?
Yep.
All right, let's get rolling. We are almost completely 46 inches, and we do keep checking all along the way. Now, we're still gonna come back with a rake. We're gonna clean this up a little bit more. We're at that 46-inch flat bottom. As soon as we get everything at that level we're trying to achieve, we're gonna cove this. So we're going down to a 4-foot flat bottom, but it's a coved flat bottom. People do that because they want a little more water depth when they're in the pool. And this is a great way to get that water depth without going to a 48-inch wall panel. So we're gonna go ahead, mark that cove out after we clean up this bottom a little bit more. Stay with us, we'll be right back and show you what that looks like and teach you how to line up your cove if you're doing a cove flat bottom. All right, buddy, let's finish up. All right, it looks good. We've got our 46-inch flat bottom cleaned up. But before we start coving, we need to lay out the pool again so we know our 1836 dimensions. And John's gonna go ahead and get that hammered in. And we know that he wants his pool to start 6 feet from his existing patio. So we need to come 6 feet off. We're gonna go ahead and get that plumb. This is probably not the plumb that you want to use. This is not your typical plumb, Bob, but
it'll work.
It will work. All right. We're looking good there. Then we're gonna take our tape And we're gonna come 18 feet out. That does look good, but we'll go ahead and get it hammered in and we'll check it in a second. And then we'll continue to go around and we're going to hit a diagonal all the way across and make sure we get all of our four corners laid out. Once we have our four corners laid out, then we can start preparing the inside of the pool for that cove bottom. Should take us a few more minutes. That's next.
If you're inspired by this video, head over to poolwarehouse.com to get your free pool quote today.
All right, John, that's looking great. We've already got all these lines laid out inside of our overdig area. So we've got an 1836 box inside of here. And now we've gone ahead and laid out his tanning ledge step. We want to do that because we don't need to excavate down any further here. This is going to stay at that 42-inch panel height. Now, if you can see, we have another set of orange lines. So right here would be the last tread of John's step. But when I step off of that tread, I can't step straight down to 48 inches of water. That would not meet code. I'm going to step down to 40 inches of water. Why 40 inches of water? Well, your panel height is 42, but you come back with poolcrete or pool base, which is going to make that a 40-inch finished dimension. Now, when you're looking at your dig sheets are the finished dimensions of the pool. You're always going to excavate down 2 inches further because you're going to come back with pool base and bring it back up. So when your dig sheet says, for example, it needs to be a 48-inch finished dimension, well, ultimately, we're going to go down 50 in that flat bottom area because we're going to come back with 2 inches of pool base. Now, how do we get there? Well, first, we come off of the last tread. We're down in 40 inches of water. Then after that, we're going to cove down 8 more inches. And that's what this next line indicates. That's the end of our cove. We're coming down to 50 inches. All right, now John and I have got our cove all cut out. We're gonna go ahead and jump on our heavy equipment and make sure we get that 50-inch flat bottom all cleaned up so we can move on to the next step. All right, John, you ready to do some work?
I'm ready.
Now, yesterday evening, we finished the floor of the pool. It's ready for panels and braces, but I wanted to pause here and talk about how to receive your pool kit. Everything that's delivered comes LTL. That means it's gonna come on a transfer truck and it's gonna be delivered curbside. They're not gonna drive down into your backyard, but they are gonna deliver it at the end of your driveway. So you need some equipment on hand to receive your pool package. John, what did we tell you needed to receive your pool kit?
You're gonna need a skid steer or a tractor with a reasonable size tractor too. Some of these are heavy and you're gonna need some pallet forks on either one of those.
Good point. So some of the pallets are heavy. I would expect max of probably 2,000 pounds, but most are probably in that 800 to 1,200 range. Your panels do weigh a lot. Now let's talk about getting those in and inventorying what you actually have. Now we've already taken all the packaging off, the box off of these panels so you can see, but before we did that, we checked all the corners. We looked for any kinds of damage or nicks that might be something we can't repair in the field. Everything looks really well. And again, you're gonna need your dig sheets. I know we've mentioned these several times, but it's important that you get your panel layout, and that's typically your first sheet. Hydra's taken the time to go ahead and put part numbers on every single panel, and I love that because those part numbers correspond to your engineered drawing that shows your panel layout. So, for example, if I'm looking at HPS 105P, well, how many of those do I need? How many do I have? I see 2 right here. Well, if I look at my dig sheet, it says I need 2 HPS 105Ps. Well, I have 2 of them, so I can mark that off. I know I've got what I've needed, and that's all gonna be on your packing list. You should be able to go through and look at those different items. Once you've inventoried everything, you're ready to start building. If you find that you don't have something or if something's damaged, go ahead and take a picture of it. Write that damage on the bill of lading. Make sure you do that and send us all that information and we'll get those replacements right back out to you. I think we've accounted for everything. We've got all our equipment here. We're ready to roll. Oh, I love that you have gloves. Don't forget, you definitely want to have gloves. These panels are heavy. I recommend 2 folks to move those around, and they do have some rough edges, so keep a set of gloves on hand. Let's go ahead and start setting panels and braces. All right.
Oh, yeah.
John, I think we've got everything laid out. And I know we keep talking about dig sheets and panel layouts, but you're gonna wanna make sure those stay on hand. So we use that to lay out all the panels. Each one of these panels is listed on the dig sheet and the panel layout. So we've gone ahead and we've got Aqua Genies, that's our skimmers. We've got those placed. We've got our 4-foot panels, our 8-foot panels. All those have been placed where they go around the pool. Now we still have to build our step, but we're gonna go ahead and start putting our braces in with these panels and attaching everything together. It's really easy to do if you hold on to your panel layout. And think about things like lights, where you want your lights in your pool. So John doesn't want the lights shooting back at the house. When he looks at the pool from the house, he wants to see the pool all lit up with light. So we're gonna put the lights on the left side. That way they shoot towards the right and away from the house. You don't have to do that, but it's little things like that that you may wanna think about when you're designing your pool package. But everything appears to be in order. We've got all the panels laid out. You feel good?
Feel good.
We're gonna start bracing everything together. All right, let's knock it out. Now we've gone ahead and got our panel shelf, and that's what the panels are setting on, all level. We've tamped it down in spots that were high, and you definitely wanna make sure that you're using a level and you're plumbing your panels before you permanently set them. We're not ready for that quite yet, but we are ready to start putting our corners together. Now I wanna note, we've left that orange string out and we've left some rebar out, and that's just to help us line up these panels and make sure we don't go too far to the left or to the right. Ultimately at the end, you can pull a tape in between your different joints to make sure you're still in square, but we're gonna use this line for now, and that's gonna help guide us. Now we're gonna put the 6-inch corner in, and we'll show you how to do that. John, if you wanna slip it down in there. And that corner is made with a really neat angled piece that fits right in, and we'll show you the front side of that, but that just creates that 6-inch radius that we're trying to achieve. Now, once he's got that dropped down in, we're gonna go ahead and lock it into place, and I'm just gonna use this tool to line these up and make sure that we are correct in our placement. There we go. And let's make sure that we're still lined out good. Everything looks nice. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some bolts and screws and just lock a couple of those in just to make sure nothing moves around while you're assembling those. And in the corner, you do need to put a couple bolts in. Ultimately, when you set your braces, you'll come back and you'll use your impact drill and you'll tighten all that down. But we're just getting our corner in, and let me pick a higher spot here. And we don't want that corner moving around on us, so I'm not gonna impact drill those in yet. But at least this won't move around while we're setting the rest of our panels. Grab another one down here, John. All right, so we've got our corner locked in here. We're gonna go ahead and add a couple more bolts to this. Ultimately, we'll get this all locked down tight once we get our braces set, but I wanna make sure everything's plumb and level before we lock everything down tight. But this corner is in, and it's really actually pretty easy to make that 6-inch corner radius. So we'll go ahead and we'll get some more panels and we'll show you that other corner when we get to it. All right, let's keep going. All right, so we're right on it. We're gonna go ahead and check our corners. We're basically checking this whole entire panel shelf as we set these panels. Now, we're not locking them in with the brace yet, but it's a lot easier to go ahead and make sure your panel shelf is level and at that right, correct elevation before you get all your braces locked in. Now, ultimately, when we come back and put our brace in, we're gonna check one more time, but we're gonna put a level on the top of the panel, and we're gonna make sure the face is plumb as well. Right now, it's a lot easier to go ahead and use a tool like John has to scrape away any extra dirt if you have some high spots. So John's been meticulously going through, making sure we've gotten rid of all those high spots. But if you have a low spot and you don't need to scrape away dirt, don't go back and add dirt. It's easy to put a shim in there. You can use some type of paver or shingle or treated wood to go in there, but you definitely want to make sure that everything is perfectly level when you're going around and setting your braces. So we're almost there, and we've gone ahead and put this string at the proper elevation. So we know if we see too much daylight underneath that string that we might need to add something, or if we have not enough daylight, we can take away dirt. It's just a pro tip. You don't have to do that, but definitely makes it easier. And we still have these corner pins in that show us that clear defined corner for this 1836. Let's keep going.
Hey, I wanted to show you something real quick. So I unboxed the second pallet, and this is all my step and tanning ledge pieces. And I saw on top here is taped over a folder with all of your directions on how to assemble all this. So this is super helpful. It's got the numbers right here on each piece of paper, and you can see the numbers right here stamped on top. This number 3, looks like under here is 4, up here is 5. So this is gonna make this way easier to assemble this stuff. So let's go ahead and start getting these pieces down inside the pool.
If you're inspired by this video, head over to poolwarehouse.com to get your free pool quote today.
Now we've gone ahead and set the panels and braces all the way around the perimeter of the pool, but I wanted to pause here to show you that these are definitely different panels. If you can tell, they have some embossed indentations that are on the front. This is because these panels are meant for your tanning ledge and step. They definitely correspond to your risers and your treads, so make sure when you're using your dig sheets and your panel layout, you note these panels. Now, a couple things I wanted to point out. First, we've got this corner. And if you can tell, this is very similar to that 6-inch corner that we did in the deep end. The only difference is this panel is just maybe 6 inches. It is not as long as that other one. If you remember the deep end, it went all the way down. On this side, it doesn't have to. Make sure you hold on to this. Now, how did we know this goes here? Hydra Pools does a fantastic job giving detailed dig sheets and breakouts for their steps. Now, John has one in his hand, and John, we know that, here, I'll borrow that from you here. What we know is that 12, which is marked 12, these are your corners, and I love that. Next, well, what goes here? Well, if I look at the drawing, John's kind of gone ahead and laid things out, but we have a 6. That's the first front of that tread riser that goes here, and we have an 11 that goes after that. And what I love is that's numbered right on your drawing. It shows the exploded version of your step. It's kind of like putting together a complicated Lego set. You're gonna go through, you're gonna look at each piece and see where it goes. Now, John has already laid out all the other treads and risers here. So if you look, he's got 7, 7, 8, 4, I think that's a 9 and a 4. And if I look here, it goes 7, 7, 8. And so we know we've got a 12, a 6, 11, a 7, and an 8. And that all makes up our entire corner area for this first section of the step. So we're gonna go ahead and pause. We're gonna put this together. We'll come back, we'll show you what that looks like, but make sure when you're opening up your pool kit, put your hand on your dig sheets, put your hand on your step explosion. If you have one of those still full built-in steps or tanning ledges, hold on to those. They're a great reference, and they show you how to easily put this entire section together. So we're gonna keep making sure it's plumb level, but at the same time, we're gonna go ahead and attach these and see if we can build the frame of this step out. You ready to sweat a little bit?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, that's looking good. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this entire first section of the tanning ledge and step built, but I wanna take some time and talk to you about what we're actually doing here. So for starters, we are putting in what I call the liner track. So you're gonna wanna install these, but install them a little bit looser. You don't have to clamp them down all the way immediately, because we're gonna come back and level these out once we get the face of our step on. But this is your liner track. Ultimately, your liner has a tab on the backside that squeezes right down in here and holds it into place. So we got to get these right, but this is part 10. Part 10 is actually spelled out on our drawing. I'm going to set that there, and we're going to go ahead and get the other part here. we'll go ahead and get 10 on, and then we'll show you what happens next. So it's gonna go 10 right underneath that. We're gonna have 6, and 6 is a really cool looking piece. It's got an angle, it's got some bolt holes on the sides, but if you see these interesting diagonal almost positioned bolt holes, that's because this entire piece, which is the face of your step, is gonna perfectly marry up to those. And kind of like that. We'll show you what that looks like in just a minute, but so you can get an idea of what we're doing, that's the next step. John, let's go ahead and get our second piece in. This is not it. 10 is what we need, 10 is what we need. We'll get that in. Now we've got our first riser attached and it looks really good, but before we keep going, I want to talk about this brace. Now the brace is labeled number 5, but remember, in this particular setup, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 modular sections. So in this section, we have 12 pieces that are labeled 1 through 12. In this next section, we'll probably have 7 or 8 pieces. They'll also be numbered as well. But we want to go ahead and grab piece number 5, which is our brace. And I want to show you how that slides in because some folks have questions about that. But if you'll notice, the brace doesn't go on the outside. It's actually, there's a notch in the bottom of this panel where that brace slides right in. And ultimately, we're going to marry that up with these bolt holes. Now, if you're a little bit too high like we are, we're going to shim that. But remember, we're coming back with concrete that's going to lock all this in securely. But in the meantime, if you need to shim some things, do that. We're going to go ahead and lock our brace in, get our next tread and riser going up, but at least you can see that's how the brace goes. And a lot of folks will go ahead and stick another piece right here in the front and continue that along. So if you want to go ahead and do that front step all the way across, you can. But do note the way that brace slides right in that notch groove on your first riser there. All right, let's bolt this one in. All right, we're checking to make sure everything is level. If you can tell, we went ahead and got that riser assembled all the way across the front. So we went riser, brace, and remember, each section is a module. I love that Hydra does this, but when you get your step breakout dig sheet, it's gonna show an exploded view of each module. So this is a module, this is a module, this is a module, this is another module, and finally, you've got a corner module at the very end. Now, some of these are the same. They're just different perspectives in that that's the right side and then the left. But each module has its own corresponding sheet that shows you the breakout. Now that we've got part of the front all the way assembled, John's gonna go ahead and make sure it's level, and then we're gonna pull a string all the way across to make sure that we're straight. Why are we doing that? Well, at this point, we're setting panel brace, but that's done. All along the way, we've been checking to make sure we're square. We're pulling a tape from each joint to make sure that this pull is perfectly square, but this would be our last chance to make sure we catch any type of inaccuracies in our measurements. We're gonna pull a string all the way across the front. Everything should be straight once we get leveled. Now, another thing to note is there's a lot of rock down here. We ran into some rock when we were doing our excavation on this end. There is never a perfect dig. So if you'll notice, there's some low points here. We've shimmed that up, it's okay. We're gonna pour our gravel backfill in here, and we're also gonna do some cement work back here. So ultimately, all these shims will be covered and reinforced, but you wanna make sure you've got everything squared and level as you keep building that step up. So John, we've got concrete coming in 45 minutes. So we better keep rolling. We're gonna try to finish this step up real quick. We'll take another break in a minute and show you where we get, but so far, we've got that whole front riser built out. We've got our corners locked in. Steps looking great. Let's keep trucking. Now we've gone ahead and finished out the step. We put our rebar just like behind the panels. We put that right in the slots that are there, pre-punched for rebar sticks to go in. We got our fit, our finish. We made sure everything was square before the concrete arrived, and we had to knock it out quick. We only had about 45 minutes. So we've got all of our panels set around the pool. As I mentioned earlier, you need to go ahead and get them level, make sure that they all are at the same elevation. Now, we're putting rebar in the back of each panel. There's actually a hole that's punched out for you to hammer in a stick of rebar. All that rebar does is hold that panel in place and give a little more structural integrity when you're pouring your collar around the pool. Now, what we're doing is we're going panel brace, but we're rebarring along the way as well. When you put your brace in, that's when you're going to make sure the face of your panel is plumb as well. I think we talked about panel heights a little bit earlier, but this is a 42-inch panel. This is a 4-foot cove flat bottom. So if you can imagine, that water is going to come up right about here. You're never going to fill it all the way to the surface. So you are going to have a little bit over the belly button line, depending on how tall you are. I'm 6 foot, so depending on your height, depend on that water depth. If you're looking for something a little bit deeper, you can always consider a 48-inch panel or a 52-inch wall panel. And for sure, if you're looking at a true flat bottom pool and you don't want to cove it, that extra panel of height would definitely play into the construction process. But we're going to keep going panel brace, panel brace. John is going ahead and he's driving that stake into the ground to lock this panel in place. We've got it plumb and we've got it level. So it's really a great brace design, and we'll check it one more time on the face of the panel, and we are just about perfect. And the reason I love Hydra's fold over turnbuckle brace, it comes in 2 pieces. So when you get your kit, you're gonna have a long piece that looks like this. It ultimately will be your brace, but there's also a turnbuckle that attaches to the end of the brace. And that turnbuckle is what twists to help get your panel plumb. So to use a fold over, you simply put your foot on it, step right in the middle, and it folds right over. Then your brace will attach straight to the panel, and there's bolt holes for that. And then the turnbuckle attaches at the top as well. Now the turnbuckle is great because it lets you get that panel plumb, and then the brace will lock it in. Now once you get your brace right where you want it, there's actually a bolt hole in the bottom where you can bolt your stake to your brace. Once you've concreted everything in, this is never going to move. Combined with the rebar, it's definitely a lot of structural integrity. We do have other brace options, but this is by far the most popular option. John, we've got a lot more to do, so let's keep rolling.
All right.
All right, we've got all of our panels and braces set, and I know we've mentioned this turnbuckle several times already, but we've got everything plumb on the face of the panel. Everything is level on the top, but we're gonna have an automatic cover on this kit, and whether you had an automatic cover or not, it's important to make sure everything is straight. So we're using a line, and we're gonna pull that taunt, and we're looking for any gaps. And if you have a gap there, we can use a pin or use something like a piece of rebar, but you can actually continue to straighten that panel. And if you can see the gap that's right here, I don't like that. When you have that auto cover traveling back and forth, you want it to be perfect. So I'm gonna make a little bit of an adjustment here. And if you can see, we're starting to move that gap, closing it down, close it more. John, how are we looking?
Looking pretty good.
We're almost perfect there. And we're gonna come down and we're gonna hit this turnbuckle. Again, just another great design by Hydra. It's super easy to turn these turnbuckles on your brace, and that'll help make sure everything is plumb and straight. Looking good there. I'll probably give a twist or 2 right down here. And once we get these perfectly straight, we'll be ready for concrete, which is getting poured here in just a few minutes. But if you'll notice, we've already rebarred the back of these panels as well. Everything is going to be locked into place. Nothing will be able to move, so we'll be pretty much set for the rest of the build. But it's critical that you make sure you get your panel plumb, you get it level, and everything is perfectly straight before you pour that concrete collar. Once that goes in, you're not moving panels around. Now we're pouring our collar, but I wanted to show you a quick little addition we made to the front of this step. Now, if you remember, we had a gap underneath here. It's okay, we're gonna fill with concrete, at least a good base layer inside of this step, but we took a piece of the pallet that the kit was delivered on, And we actually rebarred that right in front of the step. That way, when you're pushing that concrete underneath this first tread, you don't bow that step back out. You want to keep everything flat. And this also prevents any of that concrete from spilling back into the pool. So definitely wanted a nice little wedge that holds that in. You don't have to do that if you have a perfect level build and you've excavated and this is setting right on dirt. However, if you do want to keep that from moving around that front riser, you can easily take a piece of that pallet and rebar it right in place. Now on the back side, we've got paver blocks on the back wall. We're okay if concrete comes right underneath that wall because ultimately we want all this to be locked in with that collar. But if you do have a gap and you want to make sure that your riser doesn't move, take a piece of that panel, cut it off, and you'll be able to stick that right in place. We've just finished our collar around the outside of the pool, so that whole perimeter area is poured about 8 to 12 inches deep with concrete. And we also filled another 6 inches or so inside of our tanning ledge step. All in all, this is an 18 by 36. We've used about 7 yards of concrete. It's better that you have too much concrete as opposed to not enough. So if you have extra, it's okay. You can put that in your overdig. You can go ahead and put that inside of your step, but you don't want to not have enough. So it's okay, go an extra yard or two over if you're worried about it. Now we're gonna go ahead and let the concrete cure. That means we're done for the day. Tomorrow we're gonna dive right back in and show you how easy it is to install the Aqua Genie skimmer, and we'll also teach you how to put in those 1.5-inch return lines for your tanning ledge and your step. Now we've got Marshall here from Pool Warehouse, and we yanked him out of the office and got him sweating a little bit so he can go over the Aqua Genie. He's a specialist on this product, and we want to make sure that you understand why we've chosen this and why we feel like this is the best skimmer on the market. So Marshall, take it away.
Yeah, really glad the homeowner decided to go with Aqua Genie skimmers here on his flat bottom pool. It's going to make his pool, you know, way cleaner. It's going to be way easier for him to just take care of the pool, keep it clean. He went with 2 Aqua Genie skimmers. My favorite thing about this is, so it's a suction line. It's your normal skimmer, just like any other skimmer, but it's also got a return line. So it's built into the skimmer. So rather than it having jets around the pool, both skimmers have a return line that shoots out the bottom of the skimmer. It creates a circular motion this way, rather standard pools are moving this way. It's gonna lift water up off the floor of the pool. That's why it's gonna work really well in this flat bottom. So it's gonna scoop up any sediment, leaves, bugs, anything that settles on the floor of the pool. It's gonna scoop it back up, along with, you know, cooler water is typically at the bottom of the pool, so it's gonna lift that up. It's gonna keep the pool a more even temperature across the board.
I love that, and in my experience using the Aqua Genie, it's really less plumbing. So you have options with the Aqua Genie for 1.5 or 2 inch. Well, if you go 2-inch plumbing, you don't reduce head pressures. And if you have that quick cycle, that quick return where you're able to get all your water clean in under 8 hours, that's going to equal less utility bills.
With Aqua Genies, you don't have to have main drains.
Sure, love that. And if you don't know anything about main drains, if you do want to put those in, you have to follow the Virginia Graham-Baker Act. There's literally a law that governs how those are installed, so don't forget about that. However, if you're using the Aqua Genie, I wouldn't put them in at all.
Yeah,
if you do want to put them in, call us and we'll talk to you about the pros and cons, so why you might want them. But let's get into this Aqua Genie. And I love this gray color John went with. Definitely matches with a lot of gray decks. It matches with coping well, so love this color. And I'll kind of hold it. That's that orifice in the front, right?
Yeah, right here is where your return line's gonna be. This is your suction, your normal skimmer, and then your return line. Let's take a look at all the ports here on the bottom of the skimmer. You have all your suction ports here. Got 1.5 inch, 2 inch, and then this is a stand here. There's 1.5 inch hole for you to stick a piece of PVC just to hold the skimmer up while you're doing the installation. It's super handy. They've done that. This is your return line. This is 2-inch return line, and then down here you have 1 inch hole. This is for a overflow valve. You punch this out if you get a lot of rain in your area. Punch this out, hook it up to a drain. If you get a lot of rain, your pool fills up, it'll automatically drain out of this hole. It's built into the skimmer.
I love
yeah,
that
it's
feature.
super cool. So we're doing 2-inch plumbing on this pool. We're gonna plug this 1.5 inch hole and use this one here. And then obviously we're gonna be using this 2-inch return line. All right, so now we're getting ready to install the Aqua Genie skimmer. Now on these steel wall pool panels, we'll need to use these shims to space the skimmer off of the wall. I'll show you real quick. If you have a polymer wall pool, you'll actually need, you can get one of those out for me. Those screws that were in the skimmer basket when you open the accessory box, you'll get one of those.
Is that, oh, there's several different ones. You want a tech screw, I think.
Yeah, one of these here. When you line the skimmer up through the back of the wall, take these screws and go straight through the skimmer here into the wall panel, just straight into it. Through the back of the skimmer, yeah.
For polymer walls.
For polymer walls only. Now, we're using steel wall here.
Yep.
So I'll put that back. Get these shims out. Set that aside. So we're gonna put this screw through the shim here. Now Jones, hold that right there.
Okay.
Gonna get another one to the other side here. You can hold that one also.
Let me let you
little
get that.
twister.
There we go.
I gotta line this up right here. Yeah, both those screws pushed. All right. Boom, just like that. I'm gonna hold this in.
Don't forget to check out the full-length video on our Aqua Genie skimmer system and learn why we think it's the most efficient skimmer on the market. And best of all, you don't need to put in main drains. Check that out on Pool Warehouse's YouTube page. Don't forget to subscribe.
All right, skimmer's all hooked up.
Looks good, buddy.
Everything's in. One thing I want to note, you'll see here, the skimmer's sticking out about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. We put those spacers in to push it away from the wall, but it's still gonna stick out about 1/8 of an inch. It's okay because your wall foam for your steel panel is gonna come up. It's gonna sit flush right against that 1/8 inch there. It's gonna be a flush seam once the wall foam is in. Remember, this is a through wall skimmer. The liner is gonna seal to the skimmer, not the panel.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that actually is a better locking process. So let's go ahead and get the next one.
Let's go to the next one.
We've got our skimmer set, our return set. We're gonna go ahead and start trenching out those plumbing lines all the way to our equipment pad. I typically like to do it down at the same level as my footer. That way that water doesn't have to travel uphill or downhill, but definitely make sure to use that heavy equipment while you have it on hand to trench those plumbing lines. Guys, we have reached the end of part 1 on this DIY pool video. Make sure to like and subscribe to see part 2. And don't forget, we're about to install the first part of our automatic cover, and we've got a special treat. We have the guys from CoverStar on hand to help us teach you all the tips and tricks that are required for installing an automatic swimming pool cover with your DIY pool kit.